Welcome, class. Um, Today I'm going to talk about the origins of Islam. I teach a whole course on this topic, so this is going to be my course compressed into 30 minutes. So I'm going to leave a lot out. Islam, the first thing I want to say is Islam is very diverse. It is more diverse than either Christianity or Judaism. The Quran is a book of poetry, and it's a short book. It's about 2/3 the length of the New Testament. So Islam is enormously diverse. The Quran is infinitely malleable. And in Sunni Islam, there also is no magisterium. There is no pope. Sunni Islam is organized like independent Baptist churches. So right across the street from each other, you will get two imams preaching wildly different things. So this is something to keep in mind when talking about Islam or when teaching about Islam. Islam began with a prophet, Muhammad, who lived, who was born in 570 AD. He lived at a time that Muslims call Jahiliyyah, a time of darkness. The Arabian Peninsula, when Muhammad was born, was overwhelmingly pagan and overwhelmingly illiterate. The Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula did not have a written language, and they did not have a high religion. But Arabs were very aware that there were people around who practiced Christianity and Judaism, and they had written scriptures, they had a monotheistic religion, they had a high moral standards. And the Arabs admired these people, but no prophet had ever come to the Arabs. And the Arabs were really ready for a prophet. They were ready for monotheism, they were ready for morality, Christian and Jewish morality. And Muhammad gave them that. So that is really his achievement. Muhammad was an orphan, and he was brought up by his uncle, but he, when he was 25, he married Khadijah. She was a businesswoman, and Muhammad worked for Khadijah, and Khadijah proposed to Muhammad, and Muhammad married her. They ended up having 4 daughters. Khadijah died when Muhammad was in his 50s. And then he married several other women. When Muhammad was 40 years old in 610, he experienced the night of power. Muhammad was an earnest man. He was a seeker of the truth. He was in a pagan culture, but he admired Christians and Jews. And in 610, he had an experience of being enveloped by God. And he recited it's surah, it's the 96th surah in the Quran, but he recited this poem. Now, Muslims have a different view of revelation than Christians and Jews. Revelation is direct talk from God in the first person. The Bible is mostly written in the third person. And the Bible is mostly revelation mediated through human beings. The Quran is not mediated through a human being. It is God's direct speech. God takes possession of Muhammad and speaks directly in the first person. And so when you're listening to the Quran, you get a feeling that God is speaking directly to you in the first person. At the end of this lecture, I'm going to play a surah from the Quran, and you will, most Muslims do not know Arabic. They do not read Arabic, but when they listen to the Quran being recited, they feel an intimacy with God. They believe that just by listening to the words of the Quran, you are experiencing a barakah, a blessing. Now, Muhammad was terrified when following the Night of Power. He really didn't understand what happened to him. Muhammad's wife, Khadijah, had a Christian cousin, Waraka. Now, Waraka probably was not an Orthodox Christian. He was probably an Arian Christian. Arians do not believe that Jesus is God. And the Arians lost at Nicaea. And after they lost at the Council of Nicaea, after the Council of Nicaea affirmed the full divinity of Christ, the Arians were pushed out of the Byzantine Empire. Many of them went to live in the Arabian Peninsula. So Waraka was probably an Arian Christian, but he comforted Muhammad. He told Muhammad, you must be the prophet that we've been waiting for. And Waraka taught Muhammad a lot of Bible stories, and the Quran is full of Bible stories. You get the story of Abraham, you get the story of Jesus, you get the story of David, you get the story of Noah, Moses. Those are all in the Quran. And Muhammad, so they learned these stories, and during the course of his lifetime, they appear in his Quranic revelations. When Muhammad was in Mecca, his message was very simple. He was not a political figure in Mecca. He was only a religious figure. He preached that there's only one God. There's going to be a resurrection of the dead and a judgment, and that it is incumbent upon Muslims to care for the poor. So justice for the poor, monotheism, resurrection of the dead. That was his message in Mecca. The Quraysh did not like this message. The Quraysh who ran Mecca were cashing in on paganism. They were certainly an elite rich class that was not just in their dealings with the poor. And they did not like Muhammad or his followers. They persecuted them. And Muhammad had to leave Mecca. And he went to Medina, which is a town about 150 miles north of Mecca. And we call the migration the Hijra, the migration from Mecca to Medina. When Muhammad went to Medina, he became a political figure. He was not just a religious figure in Medina, he was a political figure. And that's in the Medinan surahs, you get a lot of legislation. You get a lot of in legalism. But in the Meccan surahs, you just get purely religious statements. The Quran is confusing to read because the Meccan surahs are mostly at the back of the Quran. The Medinan surahs are at the front of the Quran. So it's not written chronologically, according to when Muhammad revealed these surahs. This is a graph of Muhammad's personal life. He was married to Khadijah for a good part of his life. She died when he was in his 50s, and after she died, he married a lot of other women, which was common in the Arabian Peninsula, but it does cause some PR problems today for Muslims. His household was very, very complicated. He was married to a Christian. Sophia is a Christian. I'm sorry, Sophia is Jewish. Miriam is a Christian. So he was married to a Christian, he was married to a Jew, and he was married to a lot of widows, a lot of women who had lost their husbands in war. This is the cave where Muhammad received his first revelation, which is Surah 96 in the Quran. There was no written Arabic language. Certain of Muhammad's followers would write down his revelation, pieces of bark and bone. but they had to borrow a neighboring script. They had to borrow the Kufic script in order to write down these revelations, because Arabic, there was no written Arabic language. The Quran is the first book written in Arabic. And the Quran was not compiled into a book until several years after Muhammad's death. The third caliph compiled the Quran into a book. The Quran means recitation, and the primary way of communicating the Quran is reciting it. The 5 pillars of Islam. If you ask a Muslim, what is Muslim Islam all about? He will say it's about the 5 pillars. If you follow the 5 pillars, you are considered a faithful Muslim. The first pillar is the Shahada, the confession of faith. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. Salat, prayer 5 times a day. Zakat, you should give 1/40 of your total wealth to the poor every year. Now, this is not a tithe. You do not give, this is not, this money is supposed to all go to the poor, to serving the poor, not to the mosque or to the church, but to the poor. In many Muslim countries, 1/40 of your income will be automatically deducted from your paycheck, and that will go to the poor, to the ministries to the poor. Ramadan, 1 month a year, from sun up to sundown, you should not eat. You should fast. You should not eat or drink anything. So this is a practice that faith Muslims are supposed to observe. And the Hajj, the journey to Mecca. Once in your lifetime, if you can afford it, you should make the trip to Mecca. I'm going to post a video of the Hajj. It is a powerful experience of binding people together. It draws Muslims from all over the world together to experience these powerful set of rituals. And this is a crucial part of Muslims feeling unified across different cultures and different linguistic groups. The Shahada, there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. This is the Sunni profession of faith. The Shias add, and Ali is the vice-regent of God. I'm not going to talk about Shia Islam. It is a minority faith within Islam. Only about maybe 10 to 15% of Muslims are Shia. The dominant form of Islam is normative form of Islam is Sunni Islam, which at 85% or so of Muslims in the world are Sunni. This is a picture of the Shahada. Sunni Islam does not allow figural religious imagery. So religious art is calligraphy in mosques. And Arabic is a beautiful language to listen to. It's also a beautiful language to look at. And you will see in mosques very beautiful examples of elegant calligraphy. The Fatiha, this is the first surah, and every prayer begins with this surah. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, praise be to God, the Lord of the worlds, the compassionate, the merciful master of the day of judgment. You alone do we worship. You alone do we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have blessed, not those who have deserved wrath, nor the misguided. Surah 2 is we're often called the Quran in miniature. It's the longest surah in the Quran. And Surah 2 begins with the articles of belief, action, prayer, and charity. These are basically principles which all good Muslims are expected to observe. And I will read this. This is the scripture in which there is no doubt, containing guidance for those who are mindful of God, who believe in the unseen, keep up the prayer, and give out of what we have provided for them. Those who believe in the revelation sent down to Muhammad and in what was sent before you, those who have firm faith in the hereafter, such people are following their Lord's guidance, and it is they who will prosper. So the basic precepts of Islam, believing in the unseen, keeping up in the prayer 5 times a day, giving out of what we have promised, giving out of what God has provided for them, giving to charity out of what out of your provisions, believing in the revelation sent down to Muhammad and in what was sent before you. So believing in Muhammad's revelation, but also in the revelations of the prophets before Muhammad, and they would include Abraham, Moses, Noah, and Jesus. Muhammad believed that he was a prophet in the Jewish tradition, and that he preached the same message as Moses, Jesus, Abraham, etc. And having faith in the hereafter. These are the precepts that all Muslims need to follow in order to be faithful Muslims. Submission, the great problem, the human problem for Islam is that people wander away from the faith. They stray from the faith. They forget the faith. And this is called shirk. The great virtue in Islam is tawheed, or submission. And Islam actually does mean submission. Indeed, Allah does not forgive idolatry, but he forgives what is less than that for whom he wills. And he who associates others with Allah has certainly gone far astray. Muhammad, he rejected paganism as a perversion of religion. He really, he saw himself as a prophet in the Jewish tradition. He really engages Christianity. Christianity is the religion that he really engages in the Quran. Many people see Islam as a brand of Arianism, as a brand of Arian Christianity. Arius being the 3rd century Christian who said that Jesus is not God. This is Muhammad's tradition. And through the Middle Ages, church leaders would write about Islam as if it were a Christian heresy, an Arian heresy. Jesus, for Muhammad, he is a prophet. He's born of the Virgin Mary. He is not God, and he was not crucified. So you can see there's a lot of similarities between Christian and Muslim beliefs about Jesus, but there are also some striking divergences. The Quran never speaks ill of Christians as people. Whenever the Quran mentions Christians as people, it's quite complimentary. Christians make good friends, they're honest in business, they're trustworthy, etc. The Quranic view of judgment is that God is going to judge us according to what has been revealed to us. So if you are a faithful Christian or a faithful Jew and you gravitate toward what's best in your tradition, God will have mercy on you. And these are just some verses to illustrate this. Quran 2, surely those who believe and those who are Jews and the Christians and the Sabians, whoever believes in Allah and the last day and does good, they shall have their reward from their Lord, and there is no fear for them, nor shall they grieve. Of the followers of the book, the people of the book are Christians and Jews. There is an upright party. They recite Allah's communications in the nighttime and they adore him. They believe in Allah and the last day, and they enjoin what is right and forbid the wrong, and they strive with one another in hastening to do good deeds. And those are among the good. Surah 3, and most surely of the followers of the book, there are those who believe in Allah and in that which has been revealed to you and in that which has been revealed to them, being lowly before God. They do not take a small price for the communications of Allah. These it is that have their reward with the Lord. Surely Allah is quick in reckoning. So the Quran does compliment Christians at many points, but the Quran does not tolerate Christian theology, Orthodox Christian theology. The Quran says that Christians are wrong in their belief of the Trinity and in their belief that Christ is God. And the Quran 4 illustrates this. O people of Scripture, do not exaggerate in your religion and do not say about God except the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, the Son of Mary, was nothing more than a messenger of God, and his word conveyed to Mary and a spirit from him. So believe in God and his messengers and do not say three. Refrain. It is better for you. God is only one God. Glory be to him that he should have a son. To him belongs everything in the heavens and the earth, and God is a sufficient protector. So here, the Quran is criticizing the Trinity. It is warning people not to say three, that God is one and three. That is a form of tritheism. The Trinity is a threat to monotheism. Surah 4. And this is a criticism of Jews who say that Jesus died on the cross. Muslims do not believe that Jesus died on the cross. They believe someone died on the cross, and they have some explanations of who that was. Some Muslims will say it was Judas that died on the cross. Other Muslims will say that it was a 17-year-old boy who looked like Jesus and who volunteered to die in Jesus's place. And so this is a criticism of the crucifixion here, the idea of the crucifixion. And for their faithlessness and their saying against Mary a monstrous slander. And for their saying, we have killed the Messiah, Jesus, the son of Mary, the messenger of God. In fact, they did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but it appeared to them as if they did. Indeed, those who differ about him are in doubt about it. They have no knowledge of it, except the following assumptions. Certainly they did not kill him. Rather, God raised him up to himself. God is mighty and wise. In Surah 5, the Quran actually it has a narrative where God asks Jesus, did you tell people to take me and my mother as gods rather than God? And Jesus answered, glory to you. It is not for me to say what I have no right to. Had I said it, you would have known it. You know what is in my soul, and I do not know what is in your soul. You are the knower of the hidden. So here, the Quran is putting words into Jesus' mouth. God is asking Jesus, did you tell people to take you and Mary as gods rather than God? And Jesus says, I will never do that. I would never ask people to worship me as God. But here the Quran seems to think that the Trinity is Mary, Jesus, and God. And Muhammad may have gotten this idea because Christians were worshiping Mary as God in the Arabian Peninsula at this time. But here Jesus is a champion of monotheism, refusing to allow people to worship him and to Mary as gods. Finally, I just want to end with an observation of Muslim tolerance. Quran 2:256 says, there is no compulsion in religion. Truly, the right way has become clearly distinct from error. Therefore, whoever disbelieves in the Satan and believes in Allah, he indeed has laid hold on the firmest handle, which shall not break off, and Allah is hearing, knowing. Islam does have a long history of religious tolerance. There were, all through the Middle Ages, thriving Christian and Muslim and Jewish communities in the Caliphate. It's important to remember this. There is also a long tradition of intolerance. And as I said, the Quran is infinitely malleable. You can get lots of different theologies and ethics out of the Quran. There is a battle within the Muslim world today over which brand of Islam is going to dominate. Is it a tolerant brand of Islam, or is it an intolerant brand of Islam? But there are verses in the Quran that can support religious tolerance, and this is one of them. I just want to conclude by saying that Islam has been an enormously successful religion, and it is continuing to be very significant in the modern world. It's the fastest growing religion in the world today. And here's just some graphs illustrating that. Islam is the fastest growing religion primarily because of differential fertility rates. Muslims have, on average, 3 children per couple. Non-Muslims have 2. And in every continent of the world, Muslim fertility rates are higher, significantly higher than the general population. So this means that Islam will be the dominant religion in the world by the year 2070, if these trends continue. I'm just going to end here with a recitation of Surah 100. Surah 100 is a powerful surah that begins by celebrating human achievements, and then it ends by deflating those human achievements and celebrating God. And this is just, this is a very short surah, but it is an example of the power that the Quran has over believers. By listening to this, believers feel that they are hearing directly the communication of God. And the Quran recitations are almost always made by people with very good voices. So we'll just conclude with Surah 100.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعاديات ضبحا فالموريات قدحا فالمغيرات صبحا فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه لحب الخير لشديد أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم